A fundamental approach to RTI is data-based decision-making. School teams utilize different sets of data to make various decisions as far as instructional and intervention approaches for all students. However, we do tend to use universal screening data to place students in the available intervention without applying a problem-solving approach so that the intervention or treatment matches student needs. We need to use measures with strong predictive validity to catch all students who are potentially at risk. The instructional hierarchy conceptualizes skill progression. Through appropriate screening measures, we can identify prerequisite skills that are missing and identify the skill development stage for given students. The instructional hierarchy identifies 5 stages of skill development: acquisition, proficiency, generalization, adaptation, and maintenance.
How many times have we been in professional development where we're told that we need more strategies, right? We need, as they'll say, more tools in our tool belt. And the premise is that if a PD provider provides teachers with enough strategies, that eventually you will find the strategy that works for kids. And so there's some issues for this that we're going to unpack. It's not simply about getting more tools in the tool belt. We need to consider the stages of learning and how performance changes over time. And that first stage of learning is an acquisition stage. When we're in an acquisition stage of learning, we start with low performance and high error rates. Essentially, we try to do something, but we make mistakes when we do it. And as we acquire that ability, we start to be able to do it correctly, and we stop making those mistakes. So we see errors decrease and performance improve. And we get to the end of the acquisition stage, which essentially means we can do it, and we're not going to make a bunch of mistakes. And now the instructional focus changes because we enter a new stage of learning, referred to as building proficiency. In this stage of learning, the instructional tactics change because the goal of learning changes. Students don't any longer need help, now they need more practice. And the goal with building proficiency is to increase the rate at which students can perform the mathematics that they're being asked to do and keep those error rates low. Kids aren't going to be perfect, mistakes will still happen, but we're going to see those error rates stay low, and we're going to see kids learning accelerated. There comes a point in time, however, where students are fast enough. And so we refer to this as having met that mastery range where learning kind of plateaus and it's no longer important to increase speed. And so we might master that particular skill or procedure, and we're ready to generalize it, adapt it, or maintain that skill over time. Now, when we think about our tool belt, we've got this issue of all these strategies or all these tools, but it's not simply about having more. It's about knowing when to use the right tool or the right strategy for the right stage of learning. So when we're in an acquisition stage of learning, we need to measure what students know. We might potentially have to cut out the bad information, and we're going to have to hammer in that new knowledge that we want kids to know. When we shift gears to building proficiency or increasing the rate of speed, we've got a different set of tools that serve that purpose. We may still have to measure, but it's going to be a more intricate measurement. We're going to have to hold together that information in a firm way and sand off those rough edges, right? Make that content easier for kids to perform so that ultimately they can apply it or they can adapt it to new and novel situations, which is where we get into sort of the creativity and the beauty of math. Now that you have a unique set of skills and you are fluent with them, you can combine those skills in new and novel ways. So it's not just about getting more tools in your tool belt. It's also about organizing those tools so you know which tools serve which purpose. And then we can match instructional strategies to the stage of learning so that we can maximize instructional outcomes. Now, when we think about one of the most highly effective practices, it's explicit, systematic instruction. So if we wanted to replicate that on top of this graph, we would consider that explicit modeling is primarily an evidence-based strategy for supporting acquisition. So all of those strategies that we have that help make math instruction more explicit, those are really powerful for students that are in an acquisition phase of learning, meaning they need more help. At some point, we shift gears into guided practice. Guided practice kind of serves as the bridge between acquisition and proficiency building. So somewhere along the way, our explicit modeling has helped enough, and students need a little bit less help, but still some help, right? That's when we provide that guided practice. And even when they start into the initial proficiency building stages, they might not be totally showing independence, but our guided practice as a scaffold is going to be decreased. Until eventually, we are in independent practice, which means students are able to do it without the support of the teacher. And this is where we can really increase the response opportunities and the repetition that students get to provide them with enough practice so that they can become proficient in the mathematics.
Ultimately, we want to utilize the instructional hierarchy framework to have students engaged at a level that is appropriate for them. When we understand the learning progression, we are able to match instructional practices, which improves student outcomes.